Imagine being in a place where you've always felt at home, a place you helped build, and suddenly being treated like a stranger just because of who you are. This is exactly what happened to Mr. Samuel, an elderly black man, at the park he himself helped turn into a symbol of unity and hope. What should have been a simple day of relaxation turned into a nightmare when a police officer confronted him, questioning his presence there. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories with unexpected twists and life-changing moments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It was a mild afternoon at the park, the sun spreading across the lawn, and the trees casting shadows that danced in the wind. Mr. Samuel, an elderly black man, was seated on a bench, watching the birds flying over the lake. His presence there was almost a tradition. He had been frequenting that park for decades, knew every corner, and was known by everyone. Then, suddenly, Officer Nolan appeared, a stern expression on his face and his hand firmly on his holster. "May I ask what you're doing here?" he inquired, his tone already bearing judgment. Mr. Samuel looked up, surprised, but tried to maintain his composure. "I'm just enjoying the afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" The tension in the air was palpable, like a storm about to break. Nolan, however, seemed unfazed by the elderly man's calm demeanor. "We've received complaints about someone acting suspiciously here. I need you to identify yourself," he said, his voice sharp as a blade. Mr. Samuel, accustomed to hostile encounters throughout his life, took a deep breath before responding. "My name is Samuel. I live nearby. I've been coming to this park for years. I even helped build it when it was just a project." But his words, filled with history and emotion, did not resonate with Nolan. He only cast a suspicious glance and stepped closer. "That doesn't give you the right to be here, disturbing the peace," he said, completely disregarding what Samuel had just shared. The crowd around them began to notice the altercation, with looks of curiosity and apprehension. As the minutes dragged on, Mr. Samuel felt a mix of disbelief and sadness. He wasn't there to cause trouble, but to enjoy a place he loved and had fought for. "Officer, you can check my record. I have nothing to hide. I'm just here to relax, like anyone else," he said, his voice trembling but firm. Nolan, however, seemed determined to escalate the situation. "I don't care. I need you to leave immediately." "I won't say it again," he asserted, his gaze cold and his hand moving towards the cuffs. The veiled threat made the atmosphere even more tense, with a sense that something serious was about to happen. Mr. Samuel, unsure of what to do, looked around, seeking some sign of support or understanding, but found only perplexed faces. "Officer, please, there's no need for violence. I'm willing to cooperate, but I don't understand why I'm being treated like this," he tried to reason again. But Nolan's response was cutting. "Are you refusing to follow my instructions? This could have serious consequences." Those words, loaded with arrogance, echoed like a warning to everyone around. The small group watching the confrontation seemed paralyzed, unsure how to react or intervene. What was supposed to be a moment of peace was turning into a public nightmare. At that moment, Mr. Samuel felt a tightness in his chest, a bitter déjà vu of all the unjust situations he had faced. "Officer, I'm part of this community. I know every tree, every path in this park. If you knew how much this place means, maybe you'd understand," he said, trying, somehow, to elicit empathy from the officer. But Nolan remained unmoved. "That's beside the point. You need to leave now, or I'll make you leave myself," he threatened, his hand gripping the cuffs firmly. That was the last straw for many watching, and some began to murmur, expressing their indignation and support for Mr. Samuel. The growing murmur seemed to add even more pressure to the situation. "He's not doing anything wrong," shouted a woman from the crowd, and others quickly agreed. But Nolan, already on edge, shouted for everyone to back off. "Get back to your business. Do not interfere," he commanded, trying to maintain control of the situation. Mr. Samuel felt his heart racing. He knew that every word could be interpreted as resistance, and this could end badly. "Officer, I don't want to cause any problems. I just want you to understand that I'm not doing anything wrong," he repeated, his voice now lower, trying to calm the tension. But the tension between him and Nolan seemed about to explode, like a pressure cooker. As the situation grew increasingly tense, a tall man with gray hair emerged from the crowd. He wore a simple suit, but his posture commanded respect. It was Chief Connor, the local police chief. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the air as his eyes assessed the scene before him. Nolan, caught off guard, immediately straightened up. "Chief, this gentleman was acting suspiciously and refused to leave the park when asked," he responded, trying to maintain his authority. But Connor only raised an eyebrow and looked at Mr. Samuel with a look of recognition. "Mr. Samuel, it's a pleasure to see you. Are you all right?" he asked, completely ignoring Nolan's attempt at justification. Mr. Samuel nodded, but the relief on his face was evident. "I'm fine, Chief. I just don't understand why I'm being treated this way," he replied, trying to keep his composure. Chief Connor then turned to Nolan, his gaze now stern. "Do you know who this man is?" he asked, but didn't wait for an answer. "Mr. Samuel is a legend in this community. He's been here from the beginning, helped build this park, fought for the rights of everyone here today. And you think he's a problem?" Connor's words were like a bucket of cold water for Nolan, who seemed to finally realize the mistake he had made. "Chief, I didn't know," he began to stammer, but Connor raised his hand, cutting him off. "Release him immediately," he ordered, and the authority in his voice left no room for argument. Nolan, his hands trembling, released the handcuffs he had already drawn. "I apologize, Mr. Samuel. I didn't mean to cause you any trouble," he said, but the words sounded hollow, without the weight of sincerity. Mr. Samuel just nodded, still processing what had just happened. Connor, for his part, turned to the crowd watching. "I want everyone to know that Mr. Samuel is an example for this community. We will ensure that all our officers understand the history and importance of this place," he affirmed, his voice resonating with conviction. Slowly, the group of people that had gathered began to disperse, but the impact of that moment still hung in the air. Chief Connor placed a hand on Nolan's shoulder and led him aside, away from the curious eyes. "We need to talk, Nolan. This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. You need to learn what it truly means to protect and serve," he said, his voice firm but calm, as if trying to guide someone down an unknown path. Nolan just nodded, still shaken by what had just happened. For him, that day would mark the beginning of a turnaround in his career and, perhaps, in his worldview. Meanwhile, Mr. Samuel, still somewhat stunned, looked at Chief Connor with gratitude. "Thank you, Chief. I never thought something like this would happen to me here," he said, his voice choked with emotion. The chief nodded. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Samuel. This should never have happened. I want you to know that we are here to support the community, and you are part of it. More than that, you helped build it," he said, and his voice carried a mix of respect and guilt. "We need to ensure that everyone knows your story, what you represent to all of us," he continued, as if making a promise that went far beyond that moment. Mr. Samuel nodded, still absorbing everything that had happened. "I just want this park to be a place where everyone can feel safe and welcome," he said, with a simplicity that touched the hearts of everyone around. Chief Connor smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "And that's exactly what we're going to do, Mr. Samuel. I would like to invite you to participate in some meetings with our officers. They need to understand the true meaning of serving the community. And no one is better suited than you to teach them that, he suggested, and the sparkle in Mr. Samuel's eyes showed that this was an offer he would gladly accept. The tension that had dominated the environment began to dissipate, giving way to a feeling of renewal and hope. Chief Connor waved to Nolan and the other officers who had approached. "Let's talk about what happened here today. And let's learn from it," he said, as he led Mr. Samuel toward one of the benches. And so, what had begun as a confrontation ended with the promise of a new beginning, not only for Nolan but for everyone who witnessed that scene. And, unbeknownst to them, an invisible observer was recording every detail, every word, preparing to turn that story into something even greater. A few meters away, seated discreetly on another bench, a man closely observed the interaction between Officer Nolan and Mr. Samuel. He kept a serious expression, his eyes never leaving the unfolding confrontation. His name was Marcus, an independent journalist known for his investigative work. He had gone to the park that day seeking inspiration for a story about the community, but ended up witnessing something that would change the direction of his work. With a small notepad in hand, Marcus jotted down every detail, every word spoken, every move made. He knew he was witnessing a powerful story, but had no idea just how deep this account could go. As the tension between Nolan and Mr. Samuel escalated, Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. He had seen similar situations before, but never imagined he would witness something like this in a place that was supposed to be a haven of tranquility. "This isn't right," he murmured to himself, his fingers gripping the pen tightly. But he knew he couldn't interfere, at least not directly. His job was to document, to shed light on what many try to hide. And at that moment, all he could do was record. "What's the story behind this?" he wondered, as he watched Mr. Samuel, who maintained an impressive dignity even under pressure. Marcus was used to witnessing injustices, but something about this scene touched him deeply. Maybe it was Mr. Samuel's gaze, filled with experience and sadness, or perhaps it was the arrogance of the officer, acting as if he had the right to judge who could or couldn't be there. But Marcus knew that it wasn't enough to just feel. He needed to turn this into a story that would resonate with people, make them question their own attitudes and prejudices. People need to see this, he thought, as his gaze shifted from the surrounding crowd to Nolan's stern face. He felt an increasing responsibility to document everything, knowing that, with the right approach, he could make a big difference. As he watched, Marcus took out his phone and discreetly began recording what was happening. He knew that images could be powerful, capable of provoking much more emotion than just words. But he also knew that to tell the full story, he would need more. He would need to understand who Mr. Samuel was, what his story was, why this park meant so much to him. And more importantly, he would need to know what would lead an officer to treat a citizen this way. "Every detail counts," he murmured to himself, as he adjusted the camera to get a better angle of the scene. He couldn't miss anything. What Marcus didn't know was that the footage he was capturing would go viral in a few hours, sparking a wave of outrage and solidarity across the country. But at that moment, all he could do was observe, document, and wait for the outcome. When he saw Chief Connor approaching, a mix of relief and curiosity washed over him. Is he going to change the course of this story? He wondered, as he continued filming. Chief Connor was known for his firm stance against police violence, and Marcus knew that his intervention could turn this moment of tension into something greater, perhaps even a turning point for the community. With Chief Connor at the center of the action, Marcus knew he had more than just a simple story of abuse of power. It was about transformation, about how one person's attitude could change the course of an event. As he filmed, he began to imagine how he would tell this story. It's about hope, about the courage to stand against what's wrong, even when it seems impossible, he thought, and a new enthusiasm filled him. He was no longer just a witness. He felt part of this narrative, someone who had the power to amplify voices that are often silenced. He knew that, at that moment, he was documenting something that could inspire real change. As Chief Connor spoke to Mr. Samuel, Marcus realized that there was something special about this interaction. It wasn't just a superior disciplining a subordinate. It was a leader trying to show what it really means to serve the community. This is what we need to see more of, he thought, feeling a pang of emotion as he watched Chief Connor guide Nolan. The way he spoke, with respect and firmness, reminded Marcus of the stories of leaders he had interviewed over the years, people who, with small actions, managed to transform environments and mindsets. "This is the kind of leadership that changes the world," he wrote in his notepad. Marcus continued filming, capturing every expression, every gesture, knowing that people needed to see this to understand the impact of actions like Nolan's and Connor's. And as he filmed, he began to think about how he would structure his report. "I'll start with Mr. Samuel's story, show who he is, what he's done for the community. Then, I'll talk about the confrontation, about how he was treated unfairly, and then bring in Chief Connor as an example of change," he murmured, while jotting down his ideas in the notepad. He knew that it wasn't enough to just show the problem. He needed to offer a vision of hope, that things could get better. When Chief Connor invited Mr. Samuel to participate in the officers' training meetings, Marcus smiled. "This is amazing," he thought. That simple gesture could have a huge impact, not just for the officers but for the entire community. "This is the kind of story that needs to be told," he said to himself, feeling the emotion swell. He knew that many people doubted real change could happen, but there, before his eyes, something was changing. It was like watching the dawn of a new era, where respect and compassion were finally starting to prevail over prejudice and violence. As the confrontation ended, Marcus closed his notepad and put away his phone. He knew his work was just beginning. Now, he needed to interview Mr. Samuel, understand his story, hear his words, and share with the world what he represented. This park is not just a place to rest. It's a symbol of resilience, of overcoming, and Mr. Samuel is the heart of it all, he thought, as he prepared to approach the elderly man. He knew he would have to be careful, sensitive, but he was determined. What had happened there was just the beginning of a narrative that had the potential to touch millions of people. As he approached Mr. Samuel, Marcus felt a mix of admiration and responsibility. "I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Samuel. My name is Marcus. I'm a journalist, and I would really like to talk to you about what happened today and about your story. I think people need to hear what you have to say," he said, with a friendly smile. Mr. Samuel, still a bit shaken by the incident, looked at Marcus with curiosity. "I don't know, young man. I don't like putting myself out there like that," he replied, but there was a sparkle in his eyes, a spark of hope that hadn't faded. Marcus, sensing he had a chance, continued, "I understand, but I believe that what you represent is very important. Your voice can inspire a lot of people," he insisted, hoping for a positive response. After a moment of silence, Mr. Samuel nodded. "All right, let's talk. But I need some time to collect myself." "It's been a tough day," he said, and Marcus agreed, respecting the space he asked for. He knew he would have to wait for the right moment, but he felt he was about to capture a story that could change lives. He knew that, with patience and respect, he could tell the world who Mr. Samuel was and what he meant to that community. As he waited, he thought about how he would conduct the interview, the questions he would ask, how he would build the narrative so that it would be more than just a story of injustice, but a testimony of faith, courage, and transformation. When they finally sat down to talk, Marcus felt that Mr. Samuel was ready to share. "I just want people to know that I'm no different from anyone else. I just want them to respect what this park represents and for no one else to have to go through what I went through today," the elderly man said, his voice firm but filled with emotion. Listening carefully, Marcus realized he was witnessing something powerful, something that could change hearts and minds. He knew he had a crucial role in his hands, to be the channel for this story of resilience and hope to reach the world and make a difference. Mr. Samuel's story and his involvement with the park began decades ago, at a time when the space, now filled with trees and benches, was nothing more than an abandoned lot. He was an idealistic young man, with a clear vision that the place could become something more than just a symbol of neglect. This land can be a place where everyone, regardless of color, age, or social status, can meet and feel at home, he would tell the few who believed in his idea. And so, with perseverance, he gathered a small group of volunteers who began cleaning the area, removing debris, and planting the first trees. It was not an easy path. They faced resistance, prejudice, and even violence, but Samuel's faith never wavered. He became a natural leader, someone who could inspire those around him with his courage and determination. "If we don't do this, no one will do it for us," was one of his favorite phrases. The park began to take shape, not just as a physical space, but as a symbol of overcoming and unity. Over time, more and more people joined the project, each bringing their skills and contributing to the collective dream. Some donated plants, others helped build benches and pathways, and even artists decorated the space with colorful murals representing the diversity and history of the local community. Samuel, always present, coordinated everything with a smile on his face, despite the challenges he faced. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. On one occasion, a group tried to stop the park's development, claiming that the area should be sold for the construction of a private development. Samuel then led a mobilization that brought together hundreds of people, all united by their love for the park and the belief that the space should remain public. "This park belongs to all of us, and we will not let it be taken from our hands," Samuel declared during a protest that proved decisive in ensuring the preservation of the site. It was a moment of great emotion, showing the community's strength and the importance of fighting for what one believes in. Over time, the park became a landmark in the city. It was more than just a leisure spot. It was a place where people of all ages and backgrounds gathered for cultural and sports events and, above all, to share stories and experiences. Samuel, now with his gray hair, was always seen walking the paths he helped create, talking to young people and sharing the wisdom he had acquired over the years. "Never give up on your dreams, no matter how hard they seem," he would say, with a gleam in his eyes of someone who knows the value of perseverance. His presence was a constant reminder of what can be achieved with faith and unity. Samuel's contribution to the community went beyond the physical construction of the park. He got involved in educational projects, helping to create tutoring programs for young people in vulnerable situations. "The future is in the hands of these children. If we want a better world, we need to start here," he would say, as he met with teachers and volunteers to organize outdoor classes, using the park itself as a classroom. And so, what began as a simple green space turned into a true center for learning and personal growth. Samuel believed that education was the key to overcoming and social transformation, and he dedicated a great part of his life to this mission. During the most intense years of the civil rights movement, Samuel was on the front lines, marching alongside great leaders and spreading the message of equality and justice on every corner. He had seen violence and injustice up close, but he never let fear paralyze him. "I've seen things no one should see, but I've also seen the strength that emerges when we unite for a greater purpose," he would say, recalling moments of struggle. The strength he discovered on the streets, in protests, he brought back to his community, believing that real change begins in our own backyard. And so, the park became a stage where stories of overcoming were told and where every victory, no matter how small, was celebrated as a collective triumph. There were moments of great challenge, such as when an act of vandalism threatened to destroy everything that had been built. Trees were cut down, benches destroyed, and murals defaced with messages of hate. Samuel, however, did not let himself be discouraged. "They can destroy what is material, but they will never destroy the spirit of this community," he said, as he organized a group effort to repair the damage. People from all over came to help, and within days, the park was standing again, stronger than ever. That experience showed that, despite the adversities, the unity and love for the cause were stronger than any threat. The park became the stage for important celebrations, such as the annual Community Day, an event that brought together hundreds of people around music, dance, and inspiring speeches. This place is our legacy for future generations. May it always be a symbol of hope and perseverance, Samuel would say, opening each event with the smile of someone who knows they are leaving a better world behind. Children ran through the gardens, elders gathered to share stories, and, for one day, all differences were forgotten. That park, once an abandoned lot, was now the beating heart of a community that refused to be defined by hardships. Over the years, Mr. Samuel's story and the park began to attract attention from people outside. Journalists, artists, and even politicians came to see the space and understand how it had become a symbol of resilience and renewal. This is a special place because it reflects the soul of a community that refuses to give up, said a reporter once while interviewing Samuel. He, with his characteristic humility, would just smile and say that it wasn't him who had done it, but everyone who, in one way or another, contributed to making the dream a reality. And so, the park continued to inspire and grow, like a tree expanding with each new cycle. Time didn't stand still, and with it, changes came. Samuel, now older, no longer had the same energy to lead initiatives as before, but his spirit remained present in every detail of the park. "I've done my part, now it's up to you," he would say to the young people who gradually took over the responsibility of keeping the place alive and active. And they did so masterfully, organizing new events, creating inclusion programs, and renewing the commitment to keep the park a space for everyone. Samuel, whenever he could, would show up to support and offer his advice, satisfied to see that the dream he helped build was in good hands. At a commemorative event, Samuel was honored with a bronze plaque installed next to the park's largest oak tree, a symbol of strength and resilience. To Mr. Samuel, whose vision and dedication transformed this park into a refuge of hope and unity for all, read the inscription. Seeing the tribute, Samuel, moved, simply said, "This isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who believed and fought alongside me." Applauded by all present, he felt the weight of the years and battles, but also the satisfaction of knowing that every effort was worth it. That park, more than just a physical space, was a living legacy that would continue to flourish for generations. Today, the park is a vibrant place where young people gather to debate ideas, artists exhibit their works, and families gather for picnics under the trees that Samuel planted decades ago. He, now with more fragile health, sometimes walks slowly through the paths he knows so well, observing with pride what his dream has become. "I want everyone to know that if there's something worth it, it's believing we can make a difference, no matter how small," he would say whenever someone asked him the secret of his perseverance. And so, his example continues to inspire not only those who knew him, but everyone who, in some way, is touched by the strength of his story. Mr. Samuel is undoubtedly a living symbol of what it means to turn dreams into reality. Every corner of that park carries a piece of his soul, his struggles, and his achievements. And the community, which has been strengthened by his presence so many times, now gives back by caring for that space with the same affection that Samuel always showed. "The true value of a legacy is not in what we build, but in what we inspire others to continue building," he once said, and that phrase, engraved on a mural, is what guides everyone who, today, takes care of the park as he did for so many years. And so, Samuel's story continues to be told, not just in words, but in every new leaf that sprouts, in every smile that blooms while walking through those paths filled with life and hope. After the incident at the park, Chief Connor realized that he needed to turn that event into a catalyst for profound changes within the force. He knew that simply reprimanding Nolan wouldn't be enough to prevent similar situations from happening again. We need to review our training, our practices, and most importantly, our way of connecting with the community, he declared at an extraordinary meeting with the other officers. The atmosphere in the room was tense but filled with anticipation. Chief Connor had a reputation for transparency and decisiveness, and many knew he would not let Mr. Samuel's case be forgotten. What happened to Mr. Samuel is unacceptable. But it's also an opportunity to reflect on how we can improve, he stated, his voice firm and his gaze determined. To initiate this transformation, Connor invited Mr. Samuel to participate in the police training sessions. We want you to share your story, show the importance of this park and what it represents for all of us, he said in a private conversation. Samuel, initially hesitant, accepted the invitation upon sensing the sincerity in the chief's request. It will be a pleasure to help, Chief. If my story can prevent more people from experiencing what I went through, then I'll be there, he replied firmly. And so, the elderly man began attending the weekly meetings with the officers, where he shared not only his story but also his experiences with prejudice and discrimination over the years. In the early sessions, the atmosphere was charged with uncertainty. Many of the officers, including Nolan himself, didn't know what to expect. I'm not here to point fingers or blame anyone, Samuel began, looking directly at Nolan. I'm here to show that we all have something to learn, and that we can be better than we were yesterday. His voice, filled with compassion, contrasted with the harshness of the situations he described. He spoke about the challenges faced during the park's creation, the struggles against prejudice and violence, and how he always believed that unity and dialogue were the keys to overcoming any adversity. Gradually, the barriers between him and the officers began to crumble, replaced by growing respect. Chief Connor also actively participated in these meetings, reinforcing the need for empathy and understanding. What we want here is not just for you to do your jobs, but to understand the responsibility you have as agents of transformation in the community, he would say, emphasizing the importance of putting oneself in another's shoes. Samuel complemented his words with practical examples, such as the importance of listening before judging and acting with humanity even in the most tense situations. You don't have to agree with everything you hear, but you need to respect and understand that every person has a story, a past that influences their actions, he would say, and his words resonated deeply with those who listened. One of the most impactful activities introduced in the meetings was the simulation of interactions, where officers had to deal with situations similar to the one experienced with Mr. Samuel, but from different perspectives. In one of these simulations, Nolan had to play the role of someone being approached unjustly. Now do you understand what it means to be judged without cause, Nolan? Samuel asked after the simulation. The young officer, visibly moved, just nodded, feeling the weight of his own actions. I understand, Mr. Samuel. I'll never forget what I learned here, he responded sincerely. That was a moment of revelation for many present, who finally saw the impact of their attitudes in a new light. Over time, Mr. Samuel and Chief Connor developed a workshop program for the entire police force, covering topics such as racial equality, civil rights, and the importance of building trust with the community. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it and build a better future, Samuel would say at the start of each workshop, and his message was received with attention and respect. Gradually, the park, which was already a symbol of resilience and perseverance, also became a space for learning and transformation. Officers who previously saw the place as just part of their routine began to understand its true significance and respect the history it carried. The impact of the changes promoted by Connor and Samuel soon reflected in the community. More events began to be organized in the park, now with the active participation of the police, who volunteered for activities such as sports, discussion circles, and even art workshops. It's not just about being present, but about getting involved, showing that we're here to serve and learn as well, said Chief Connor, encouraging his officers to participate actively. Samuel, for his part, watched with pride each small achievement, knowing that his long struggle was finally bearing fruit. "This is more than I could have ever imagined. We are creating a new history," he said, moved. The relationship between the police and the community began to be seen in a new light. "Before, I was afraid to come here, that someone might think I shouldn't be in this park," said a young woman during one of the community events. "But now, I see the officers as part of our story, as people who really want to help us." This change in perception was a milestone, not just for the community but also for the officers themselves, who began to feel more connected and valued. "I never imagined I could learn so much just by listening," Nolan confessed to Samuel during a walk through the park. "I think everyone should have the chance to hear your story." As the months passed, Samuel and Connor's program gained recognition, attracting the attention of other cities and even human rights organizations. "What you are doing here is incredible. You are showing that change is possible, and it starts with small gestures," said a representative from an NGO who visited the park to learn about the project. And seeing the impact of their actions, Samuel felt more motivated than ever to continue. "There's still much to be done, but every step we take brings us closer to a better future," he would say as he continued to share his experiences and inspire everyone around him. One of the most memorable moments was when Samuel received an award on behalf of the community for his contribution to peace and social justice. "I accept this award not for myself, but for all those who believed that a better world is possible," he said as he accepted the honor. In the audience, Chief Connor and many of the officers were present, applauding him standing. It was a recognition not only of Samuel's work but also of the collective effort of everyone who worked to turn a negative incident into an opportunity for learning and growth. "We learned from Mr. Samuel that it's never too late to change, to be better," said Connor, moved. Samuel's legacy became so deeply ingrained that he was invited to speak at schools, universities, and even other police departments. "It's not just about telling a story, but about living what you believe in. And I believe that everyone, regardless of who they are, deserves respect and compassion," he would say, always with a firm voice and determined gaze. And so, Samuel's influence transcended the boundaries of the park, reaching people who would never have imagined the power of his words. He became a living symbol that, with courage and perseverance, it is possible to turn any adversity into an opportunity for growth and unity. Chief Connor, in turn, continued to emphasize the importance of initiatives like Samuel's within the police force. "What we've learned here goes far beyond tactical training or conduct rules. It's about humanity, about understanding that we're here to protect and serve, not just physically but emotionally," he would say at each meeting. And so, the legacy of Samuel and Chief Connor became intertwined in an inseparable way, transforming the park into a symbol not only of resilience and perseverance but also of renewal and hope. The story of that place, which began with one man's vision and the unity of a community, now served as an example for all who believed in the capacity for change and human evolution. Over time, the park became a true symbol of resilience and transformation, and Mr. Samuel's story, now known by everyone, inspired a new generation of activists to fight for their rights and a more just future. He became a mentor to many young people who saw him as an example of courage and perseverance. "If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that we should never underestimate the power of unity," he would say in his conversations with students and local residents. And so, the park, which was once just a dream, became a hub for meetings and discussions, where ideas flourished and projects took shape. One of the most remarkable initiatives was the creation of the Youth for Equality group, founded with the support of Samuel and other community leaders. The group organized regular events in the park, addressing topics such as social justice, civil rights, and the role of youth in building a more inclusive society. "This park is our stage, and every voice that rises here has the power to change the world," said Samuel during one of the inaugural meetings. And he was right. In a short time, the group grew, attracting young people from different neighborhoods and backgrounds, all united by the desire to make a difference. "Mr. Samuel showed us that the impossible is just the beginning," said Anna, one of the group leaders, who saw the elderly man as a true hero. The gatherings in the park began to attract attention, and soon Samuel realized he needed more support to coordinate all the activities. That's when the idea of creating a community council emerged, formed by representatives from different groups and organizations. "We want everyone to have a voice here, just as Mr. Samuel always wanted," said Carlos, a lawyer who volunteered to help organize the council. The goal was simple but ambitious: to transform the park into a space where every resident could express themselves and contribute to the community's development. And, over time, that vision began to materialize. The council organized monthly meetings open to the public, where topics such as safety, education, and culture were discussed with active participation from residents and even police officers. "We're here to learn from each other and build something better together," Samuel would say at the opening of each meeting, with that welcoming smile everyone knew so well. The gatherings, which were once just heated debates, now turned into true workshops of citizenship, where everyone left feeling a sense of belonging and purpose. "Mr. Samuel showed us that this park is more than trees and benches. It's a place where we can meet, understand, and unite," said Enrique, a young man who stood out in discussions about public policies. As activities grew, new challenges arose, and Samuel realized it was time to pass the torch. "I no longer have the energy I used to, but I'm happy to see that you're carrying this forward," he said emotionally at one of the council meetings. That's when he decided to invite Beatriz, a young teacher and activist, to take over the leadership of the park's activities. "I trust you to continue this work, to inspire and guide everyone here," he said, handing her an old notebook where he had been jotting down his ideas and projects since the beginning of the movement. Beatriz, honored by the invitation, promised to carry on Samuel's legacy. "You are an inspiration to all of us, and we will do everything to honor your story," she replied, with tears in her eyes. Beatriz quickly took on her role, bringing new ideas and energy to the group. She organized cultural events and training workshops, involving local artists and human rights experts. "We want this park to be a space for learning and celebration," she said as she coordinated activities. One of the most impactful initiatives was the creation of an annual arts and culture festival, which began attracting people from all over the city. "Every event we hold here is a celebration of our diversity and the strength we find in unity," Beatriz said in a speech during the festival, standing next to Samuel, who looked at her with pride and admiration. The festival became a success, featuring music and dance performances and exhibitions by local artists. "This place is magical, not just for its beauty, but for what it represents," said Miguel, one of the park's founders, who had stepped away for personal reasons but returned to active participation after seeing the growth of activities. He and Samuel embraced, emotional, recalling the early days of struggle and resistance. "It's incredible to see how much we've built together. And knowing that this continues and grows every day is the greatest reward I could have," Samuel said, with tears in his eyes. Those moments of celebration and unity were living proof that the seed planted so many years ago had blossomed beautifully. The young people from the Youth for Equality group were actively involved in the festival, promoting debates and workshops on topics such as female empowerment, sustainability, and the impact of public policies on daily life. "We want everyone to understand that, just as Mr. Samuel did, each of us can be an agent of change," said Anna, who coordinated a workshop on community leadership. The park, which was already a symbol of resilience and transformation, now also became a center for nurturing new leaders, young people who found in Samuel's story the motivation to fight for a more just and inclusive world. Beatriz and Carlos, now partners in coordinating the community council, realized there was a growing demand for educational activities and decided to create a mentorship program, where professionals from various fields could share their knowledge with young people. "We want to prepare these young people for the future, but also to keep fighting for the present," explained Carlos during one of the planning meetings. The program was an immediate success, with lawyers, teachers, artists, and entrepreneurs volunteering to participate. What we are doing here is building a bridge between generations so that Mr. Samuel's legacy continues to live on and inspire more and more people, Beatrice said emotionally, seeing the community's response. Over time, the park became a true reference center, receiving visits from other communities seeking inspiration to replicate the engagement model developed there. We came to learn from you, to understand how you turned a simple park into a symbol of resilience and renewal, said a community leader from another city. And Samuel, always humble, would reply that all of it was only possible because the community believed and united around a common purpose. What you see here is not the work of one person but of everyone who, in some way, contributed to this dream. And each of you can do the same in your communities, he would say, always with that sparkle in his eyes that seemed never to fade. In recent years, Samuel reduced his direct participation in the activities but continued to be a constant presence, watching with pride the fruits of the work he helped plant. "I've done my part, now it's up to you," he would say jokingly whenever someone invited him to lead an event. And the community, which saw him as a true living legend, reciprocated with affection and respect. At one of the last council meetings, Samuel was honored with a plaque that read, "To the one who planted the seeds of change and nurtured each one with love." Moved, he simply thanked everyone and asked them to keep fighting for what they believed in. The park is yours. The story is ours. Today, the park is a living example of what unity and determination can achieve. The activities continue to grow, and new leaders emerge every day, inspired by Samuel's story and all those who fought alongside him. The Community Council remains strong, promoting events, discussions, and actions that further strengthen the bonds among residents. And Samuel, despite his fragile health, still shows up from time to time, sitting on his favorite bench, watching with a satisfied smile everything that has been built. "It's good to see that the future is in good hands," he says, with the serene look of someone who knows they have left a legacy that will last for generations. And so, the park story continues, fueled by the spirit of transformation and hope that Samuel, with so much love and dedication, sowed in every corner of that place. After learning about Mr. Samuel's story and how he turned a moment of injustice into a movement of hope and renewal, the big question arises: what are you doing to transform the reality around you? It's not enough to just feel moved or outraged by stories like this. It's essential to take action, get involved, and, above all, believe that each of us can be the agent of change that the world needs. Have you ever thought about how you can make a difference in your community? Be inspired by Samuel's example and take the first step, whether by participating in a local project, helping someone close to you, or even sharing these stories that have the power to inspire and connect. And if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep up with videos that bring stories of overcoming, courage, and transformation. Here, every story is an invitation to rethink our attitudes and to see the world with more compassion and empathy. See you in the next video.